welcome to Normal Ireland Live. It's Friday, and look at my environment. I'm Sarah Dallal, and we have some pretty exciting things going on today, as you can see. I'm in the studio. Not only that, but we're using some pretty cool and new professional software. And to top it all off, I'm joined by the incredible and the insightful Banseka in the studio. How are we?
Hello, I am great. Good. Excited to be in the studio. Get a bit of merch in the back. It's all good. Yeah, I'm excited. It's exciting.
I know it's super exciting. I mean, I feel like this is like a huge level up from what we're normally used to. So, but I think a lot of this is to do with the fact that, you know, you guys have contributed so much to making this happen, and the fact that I'm currently in Leeds, I think, is great, and Banseka too, and the setup that Kirst has pulled into as well. So it's great. It's really exciting time. So yeah, great to have you, Banseka. But coming up tonight, we'll be talking about reforms donations, the awful Israeli attack on Lebanon, and Times radio attacks the Green Party's economic programme. But as ever, you can help us grow by visiting planleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work, or by becoming a YouTube member for just 99p. But on to our first story. Another day, another reform donation. It comes as no surprise another wealthy donor is waiting to line the pockets of reform. But who is this new guy? An article in the Telegraph revealed an expat billionaire is moving back to Britain so he can legally donate millions to Reform UK after accusing Labour of trying to rig the next general election. So, surprise, surprise, another billionaire. This all comes as a result of Keir Starmer saying that donations in cryptocurrency to UK political parties will be banned in response to a review of foreign financial interference, also known as the Rycroft Review. Ministers are also capping donations of British citizens living abroad at £100,000 annually, one of 17 recommendations made by former top civil servant Philip Rycroft. So, this guy, Ben Dolo, what does he want to do? Well, he wants to move back to donate more money, but before doing so, he wants to announce it. So, Ben Dolo chose to write an article for the Telegraph, and he stated, "My autism means I cannot cope with lying politicians. That's why I back Farage. Reform is leading the polls because it recognises the full scale of the problems our country faces. I want to help." Well, a billionaire wanting to help, those don't go in the same sentence. Billionaire and help is not something that can work together ever. It's impossible. But the thing I find the most baffling is the use of "my autism means I cannot cope with lying politicians." Who's going to tell Ben that he's investing one of the biggest liars in politics? Is it not enough that he jumped from party to party and tried 8 times to get into parliament? He did not make Brexit happen by telling the truth. But Dolo framing his support for reform as something almost inevitable, something rooted in his autism, in this idea that he's simply someone who cannot tolerate dishonesty, who is wired for truth in a world that he believes has become fundamentally dishonest, kind of rubs him the wrong way. I don't think any of us actually, as well, like anyone who lies. I think we're all sick and tired of the lies that are told in politics. And maybe I can be interrogated on this slightly, but I don't know anyone who likes, like I said, being lied to about what their economic reality looks like, or what deindustrialization feels like in certain parts of the country, or what austerity feels like. And again, this is where it becomes important to be really specific about this, really precise, because no one should dismiss or trivialize neurodivergence, and I'm not trying to do that. But at the same time, what he's doing here is translating a deeply political worldview into something that appears almost apolitical, and like that it's biological, like I can't deal with lies because I'm autistic, as though his conclusions about immigration, about the economy, and about institutional lying, which he talks about in the article, are simply the natural outcome of seeing the world clearly. But they're not. Anyways, Ben continues. "Recent events have made me determined to play a part in trying to save Britain before decline becomes irreversible. The biggest obstacle to national recovery is the entrenched self deception of our elites. Their regime of nonsense now poses such a grave threat to the UK that for the first time in my life, I've become politically active. Since the start of this year, I've donated £4 million to help Nigel Farage to build Reform UK into a genuine alternative party of government." Now, Ben made his fortune as the co-founder of BitMEX, a cryptocurrency trading platform. But in the article, he's framing his argument about Britain's failure around cultural issues, the importation of working age people, he says, and the dishonesty of politicians because of them wanting to appeal to certain voters. What's striking is not just the argument itself, but how closely it aligns with the political projects he's now funding. He quickly just mentioned the elites, but he definitely is part of that establishment. But anyway, Ben Dallal is a man who in 2022 pled guilty in the US to failing to implement an anti-money laundering program. But guess what? Was pardoned by Donald Trump, the US president, last year in 2025. Tell me again about this honesty you root yourself in, Ben. Tell me more about it. The holier than thou act needs to be dropped. Now we need to interrogate the circles he runs in. This man, Ben, is being painted as a patriot by Zia Youssef and Farage for donating big lump sums. But I don't understand what patriotism this guy is rooted in. He's just not in touch with the reality that we're rooted in. Now, Reform's donations are no secret. They have had some pretty big donations. Christopher Harborne donated £9 million last year in 2025, then later donated about £3 million, the largest single donation ever made to a UK political party by a living individual. Property developer and Reform treasurer Nicholas Candy donated up to £500,000. Then we had William McIntosh, £100,000. Anthony Bamford, £200,000. Please look at this guy's hat and tell me where you think he aligns when it comes to his political ideologies. Anyway, donation. And the question we should be asking is, what does this mean for Reform? Another fat donation. But Banseka, let me throw that question to you. What does this mean for Reform? If you've literally got billionaires coming back to the UK to make these big donations, and most importantly, what does this say about the state of our democracy?
I mean, I feel terrible for autistic people right now because I feel like they're getting some awful PR from some really just bad people, rich people, Elon Musk, Kanye West, who are all sort of associating autism with various unsavory and unpleasant things. So I hope their PR gets better for them soon. Autistic people don't deserve a lot of these associations. I suppose first of all, there has to be some kind of a cap on donations. I think anybody reasonable and normal would say that it's actually pretty outrageous that you can donate £4 million in one fell swoop. £4 million to a political party? And no political party should be seeing that much money from one single individual. I mean, that's totally absurd. In the Telegraph article that I think you quoted from, he seems very concerned. Oh, Britain needs fixing, so I'm being patriotic and coming back to fix it. The reality, of course, being that things are already working out pretty well for somebody like him. Whilst I'm glad at some of the things that the Labour Party have talked about introducing in terms of curbing big money in politics, Keir Starmer is not a huge threat, really, to the kind of hegemony of wealthy people and the influence that they have over our politics at all. And we have to remember that I think for the first time ever, Keir Starmer has overseen more political donations from individuals and corporations than from unions for the first time in Labour's history ever. So whilst I do welcome some of the stuff they're talking about, and I really want them to usher at least some of it through, it's not a massive threat to this guy's kind of sweet deal that he's got as a very wealthy person. So it's pretty dishonest, really, and it's kind of scaremongering to say things are so awful under Keir Starmer. We really must just back someone who can challenge them as well. It's really ridiculous. Ultimately, this guy's got a choice, like all wealthy people, which is that you can have a more wealth redistribution, which is what's coming from the left of the Labour Party, I should say, the Green Party in the UK, or you can back a party that's choosing to scapegoat a bunch of other people, and you get to keep your wealth. And he's chosen the latter. He's chosen to be like, well, we'll just scapegoat these other people and I get to keep more of my wealth. And that's basically the calculation that he's made in his head, right? So it also came to my attention that The Guardian as well found that he'd given all sorts of support in kind to quite a few other people too. So he'd given support in kind to Rupert Lowe, Kemi Badnot, Michael Gove. So it's clear he doesn't have like a clear ideological commitment necessarily to a singular party or even a singular vision on the right. He's kind of just sniffing out, I think, like opportunities for him to kind of grab onto whoever's going to be in power and presumably try and influence those people by giving them money. It's interesting as well. He's also got his fingers, in like media. So he has like a podcasting studio in central London near Westminster. Rupert Lowe goes to record podcasts there apparently. Never watched one, I have to be honest. And also the trigonometry guys also apparently have used the studio, and they've got probably about 1 million or 1.5 million subscribers on YouTube. So he's got his fingers, this guy, in quite a lot of pies when it comes to politics in this country. Probably be nice if people like us had some billionaire funding to fund what we do, but I have a funny feeling we're not going to get any offers from billionaires anytime soon, and frankly it's just as well. So it's utterly ridiculous, this idea that this guy's coming back for patriotic reasons to save this country. He's coming back to keep the hegemony that he wants for himself.
Yeah, really well said. And it's true. He's only donating the amount he is to this party because it's going to protect his own interests. He's only interested in protecting his own wealth interests. Hence why he's trying to kind of cut corners since Starmer said what he said about the cryptocurrency. But this should have been expected. Starmer should have known that this is what people would do. They would just come back into the country and donate to the parties that they feel like will line their pockets better. But it's interesting that you mentioned the whole Rupert Lowe and Kemi when it comes to Ben Dolo, because in the article that he wrote, he had said that he likes Kemi. She's all right, but Rupert Lowe, he said, yeah, he really admires Rupert Lowe because Rupert Lowe successfully shifted the Overton window right and tests reform in some pretty spectacular ways. His words, not mine. I don't think he used the word spectacular, but I think he thinks that they're testing reform and their boundaries a little bit better. What do you think about that statement, though, that he said that he thinks that Restore's existence tests reform in the way that it's supposed to be tested?
Oh, absolutely. Like that's why I'm worried about Restore, not because I think lots of hordes of people are going to come out and vote for them. I don't think we're there yet. But of course, having somebody carping from the sidelines on the right naturally is going to push them more to the right. Rupert Lowe is constantly on their back all the time, badgering about, candidates that Reform have got that basically don't look white enough for his liking, banging on about how their migration plans are actually not strict and stringent enough. So he's kind of constantly pushing that boundary, and the way in which I think Reform are kind of constituting their voter base of who they see themselves as kind of gathering together to win an election. I think they are going to be quite worried that they could maybe lose some of those people to elsewhere. So I think it will put a lot of pressure on them to move rightwards. You've also got the left, to be fair, which is also now with the Greens putting that pressure on the left. So the Reform Party might also have to think about how might we not lose people to the Greens, especially given that there was an interesting by-election there, council result today, for example, that I thought was quite surprising in Kent of all places. We can talk about that later. But yeah, like I think the presence of Restore Britain is not necessarily they'll get a majority, but that it will push, of course, politics ever rightwards, as though we are not right-wing enough already. The answer is always to move more right, apparently.
Autism that I didn't quite take a liking to, because I don't think anyone likes to be lied to, but that I think made me feel quite uncomfortable. But just to develop the story a little bit further, a few months back, with credit to our very own Lewis Aaron, we got to cover the story of John Simpson. John Simpson, a church warden and conveyancer who has significant control of Interior Architecture Landscape Limited, very long company name, a UK company that donated £200,000 to reform last year, and whose clients included Iranian billionaire Sazan Gandahari and his family. Now, this guy has a senior role at a Dubai-based company, Orico, that until 2016 had business ties to a since-sanctioned Iranian conglomerate with deep links to the Islamic Republic's government, according to documents seen by the Financial Times. The Financial Times made this nifty flowchart that I'll attempt to explain briefly. The Financial Times states that the link between Orico and Iran came to light in a court ruling last month by France's highest administrative court, which upheld the withdrawal of refugee status from an unidentified man. This unidentified man was referred to as Mr. C. The man was alleged to have embezzled several million euros for his quote unquote personal enrichment in his roles at AQR, Umran Razafi, and Orico. The person close to Orico denied Mr. C had worked for the company. Now, in 2021, the US Treasury Department placed AQR under sanctions, citing its control of quote unquote large swathes of the Iranian economy and its links to then Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and senior government officials. Simpson's link to reform has been called into question by Liam Byrne, chair of the UK House of Commons Business and Trade Select Committee. In February, the senior leader MP asked Companies House, the UK corporate registry, to open a formal probe into the accuracy of Simpson's company Interior Architecture Landscape Limited, otherwise known as IAL Limited Register, which had £81,432 in cash as of January 2025, according to its accounts. Between June and August 2025, it made 7 donations to reform, totaling £200,000 in total, according to the Electoral Commission. At a press conference in February, Farage said that whilst he knew most of his donors, he didn't know Simpson. Farage's spokesperson previously told the Sunday Times that the Gandaharis, who are clients of Simpson's company IAL Limited, are quote-unquote friends of the party. Reform UK said in a statement that this story is about a company, Orico, that hasn't donated to us. We can confirm that we have carried out all of the checks required in relation to the company donors. Granted, I'm speaking about this story very, very briefly, but I say all of this in relation to Ben Dolo earlier, because the question isn't whether the rules were broken, it's whether the rules are anywhere near strong enough for the kind of financial networks that now sit behind modern politics currently. Banseka, what do you think about that? Are the rules anywhere near strong enough for the kind of financial networks that now sit behind modern politics?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of this is about sort of sovereignty, really. And this country, we kind of had a semi-conversation about sovereignty in this country, very much off the back of Brexit. And whilst I was a Remainer, I could totally see that there were valid conversations to have about sovereignty and where decision-making lies in this country. Nigel Farage, leader of Reform, has made himself very much, of course, the poster boy of sovereignty, you know, this kind of image of the UK unshackling itself as part of the sort of Brexit project, that we could go out on our own and choose our own destiny. I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for that in principle, and I think those are actually very important things for states to be able to do. But it seems like when it comes to money and politics, influence politics, foreign policy as well, he doesn't really seem to believe in sovereignty at all. He seems quite happy to concede this country's sovereignty to various different other influences. So it really feels like his version of sovereignty is not really about sovereignty for people, it's sovereignty for the rich. Sovereignty for the rich to do what they want with their money. I think part of the issue with tackling some of this, and I do have some appreciation for how difficult it probably will be for a government to seriously tackle some of this, is how mobile money is, especially when you have a lot of it. You know, when you're rich, you can just push money into, you know, a shell company here and then pull it out again and then put it into another asset and then liquidate that asset. And so you can kind of put the money through lots of different cycles to kind of clean that money out. And then it becomes maybe harder and more difficult to pin down and say, well, this money's really from here. This money's really from this, you know, this malicious billionaire who maybe doesn't have the world's greatest interest for us in that state over there. It's why Reform, I suppose, can perhaps more easily wash their hands of any association with, you know, a questionable Iranian billionaire or sanctioned Iranian conglomerates, right? And it's a reflection of globalization and globalization without internationalism. So in other words, really, it's about the flow of capital, the flow of goods, the flow of money, but it's not so much about the flow and freedom of people. It's not about having, you know, democracy worldwide. It's not about justice. It's not about those things. So it's a very kind of, you know, depressing, I think, a neoliberal idea, really, which is the pursuit of, you know, a flow of capital, not people, no pursuit of global justice or democracy. As for how our political class, you know, can kind of deal with it, it probably makes a bigger case for saying, look, we really need a wealth tax, because these people have so much money that they've got money to waste on these political parties to make sure they have even more money. We need to make sure we need to break that cycle. I don't know how we do it, but we need to break that cycle where, we actually have these people having less money. We need a windfall tax maybe, and some better established wealth taxes, to not allow individuals to be able to accumulate so much wealth. There's a fundamental problem perhaps with capitalism, right? And the way in which capitalism will always, many of us believe, destroy democracy. The two are not compatible. I should also point out as well, this is an incredibly concerning thing for lots of people. There's been some really good data that shows that around 2/3 of people now think there should be a cap on political donations, which is far more than even just a few years ago. So the political appetite is there. Lots of people, I think, across actually the political spectrum, much like in the US and America, are quite worried about the influence of money in politics, but our political class doesn't really seem to be doing anything about it, other than perhaps a little bit of a weak attempt by the Labour Party. Welcome, but it's far from what we need.
It does concern me though, doesn't it? Because like when I'm thinking, I hope we're moving in that trajectory where people are really concerned about where wealth is concentrated and where wealth is coming from. But when we have people voting for the likes of Reform and 14 years of voting for Tories, I never voted, but people were consistently voting for the Tories, that they managed to stay in power for 14 years. I'm like, do people actually, are they in touch with where money is coming and going and where it's concentrated? And or are they just more aware of it now because of how it's pinching them? But I would be really concerned if people are still going to continue voting for the likes of Reform, when you've got somebody who's literally moving from where he lives in Hong Kong back to the UK to then donate to a party that only cares about the wealthy. So I wonder how we can shift that thinking. I don't know if people will generally wake up. I think most people are awake, but I don't know if people are very much concerned about where wealth is concentrated or how it's going to impact the working classes. Unless,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know what's going to happen.
I hope it. Well, my hope, at least. I don't know if anyone else is hopeful. My hope is that alternatives on the table will change that, and that the only alternative at the moment, because your party is not really much of a functioning vehicle in many respects, is the Green Party. And so my hope is that with an alternative on the table who is doing politics differently, that they don't take big political donations from single individuals. They've kind of got that inbuilt into their party system. My hope is that other option on the table that is both a more enticing, I hope, policy option in the long term, but also a much healthier option will kind of steer people away. But we'll have to wait and see.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Thank you so much, Banseka. On to our next story, though. On to Lebanon and Israel, and here's where things kind of stand right now. I think we've been watching the news unfold over the past week, and it's been really intense. There is this really fragile ceasefire between the US and Iran, but almost immediately after that was announced, Israel launched large-scale strikes on Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah. It says, I wish to inform you, so what Netanyahu says, I wish to inform you there is no ceasefire in Lebanon, Netanyahu says in a video he posted on Twitter. He said Israel was continuing to strike Hezbollah with full force, and we will continue. Sorry, let me start again. And we will not stop until we restore your security. This came after President Trump said he asked Netanyahu to be, quote unquote, more low key, with the US claiming they wanted to negotiate with Iran. I take all of this with a pinch of salt. The US wanting to negotiate with anyone, I think, is always off the table. Israel's position is that Lebanon is not part of that ceasefire and that its war with Hezbollah continues separately. At least 303 people were killed in Israeli strikes yesterday or 2 days ago, according to Lebanon's health ministry. The toll is expected to increase as rescue teams continue to recover bodies from the rubble, the ministry said. They also reported that since the 2nd of March, Israeli strikes have killed 1,888 people and injured more than 6,000 others. What makes this moment so utterly insane and reveals so much about the politics at play here is not just the violence itself, because obviously that's atrocious and the number of deaths that are unfolding, but the complete and utter contradiction at its core. Because on one hand, we're being told that there is a ceasefire, then diplomacy is underway, that negotiations are happening, that de-escalation is the goal, and yet in practice we're seeing something entirely different. We are watching one of the most intense waves of strikes in Lebanon, with hundreds being reported killed in a matter of days. So the first question I want to ask is, what the hell does a ceasefire actually mean if major military operations are continuing in the way that they are, and this onslaught of violence keeps taking place. And the answer seems to be it depends on who's bloody defining it. And this is where I'm going to be like super, super frank and clear with you. When you look at the cumulative effect of this kind of military approach that Israel is enacting, not just in Lebanon, but across the region, what they've been doing for years in Gaza and in Syria, it is not unreasonable to interpret it as part of the broader project that goes beyond immediate self-defense, which is what they tend to claim. And it's all feeling like it's part of the greater Israel project that they've pointed to before. This atrocious, barbaric, insane, and heinous systematic expansion of this battlefield where neighboring territories are repeatedly subjected to force and harm, where instability is produced and sustained continuously, and where the conditions of civilian life are eroded in ways that reshape those spaces over time is really, really frightening and horrible to see day in and day out. Banseka, I just want to get like your thoughts on this. Like, what do you make of all of this? I'm kind of getting to a point of like legitimate frustration every time I hear the term ceasefire, when ceasefire is so meaningless now. So what are your thoughts on all of this?
I think on Israel's side, I think they're getting quite desperate, really. You've got this kind of two-pronged, or we've had this two-pronged set of ideas about, Iran and why they're such a threat to the region, which involves nuclear weapons and terrorism, this kind of twin, apocalyptic threat that supposedly Iran poses to the world, or to the Western world. There's no real evidence, I think, for some of that, particularly the idea that they're trying to seek nuclear weapons, right? They're trying to get nukes. You could probably make an argument to say that they want to be somewhere around a sort of nuclear threshold status, maybe, where they have, decent or significant weapon capability, which they do already have to an extent. And to an extent, you can understand why, because, they have resources that the West wants, that the US empire wants. So I think they want those weapons to have some sort of leverage to be able to end some of the economic sanctions that they're facing, end the kind of economic isolation, and a threshold nuclear status, I suppose, is a way of them getting there, yeah. But the concept of them getting nukes to destroy the West or destroy Israel seems totally unevidenced. And they already have access to certain other types of weapons that they haven't used, for example, things like chemical weapons. That they haven't used them. They could use them if they wanted to, and Israel has used them. We know Israel's used them in Gaza. They've been pouring, things like white phosphorus on a civilian population, which is of course a war crime. And they haven't. Iran has not used those nuclear weapons, I think, as far as those weapons, those chemical weapons, as far as I know. So this whole thing about them just being this horrific threat to Israel and this horrific threat to the West, it's that's not true. It's a huge hyperbole to be quite honest with you. The case to remove Israel's military capabilities as much as possible, i.e. to stop selling arms to Israel, to stop giving them money, to fund them, to fund their military. The case could not have been stronger. We're both people, I'm sure, who've always thought that they should stop receiving military aid from the US and from the West, but there couldn't be a clearer case at the moment. And I think it's increasingly alienating, I think, people across the world, but particularly I think the American public. It's alienating them because, frankly, what do they gain from any of this? Like, this is Israel's war in so many ways. I don't see what the US people are really gaining from this. For the most part, they've kind of failed quite horrifically, really. They haven't really got anything out of this at all, despite how Trump wants to spin it. And we also know that, interestingly, in the US, there's a real alienation now with a lot of the people who helped Donald Trump get to where he got to in terms of winning that last general election in the US, the likes of Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, these people, these political influencers, these political podcasters, Theo Von, who helped him secure that last win. They're also now being alienated as well, presumably because their audience does really not see the point in what the hell all of this is. So, I mean, from a US perspective, this war just seems totally pointless and nuts. The only thing that a country that seems to be gaining anything from this increasingly is Israel. I don't see what anyone else gets from this, quite frankly. And their motivation is clear. It couldn't be clearer. They desire a greater Israel. I think it was Ben Smotrich was talking, I think yesterday or earlier today, about plans for a greater Israel that expand into Lebanon. It couldn't be clear what this project is and for whom it would benefit. And so the fact that they just don't care about this so-called ceasefire, the word ceasefire couldn't be more meaningless now. I agree with you either. It's just, I don't know if it's just an act of real desperation. And just a final point really on this, but in terms of Israel getting desperate and also the US, I do wonder if, these are the hallmarks of empires that are dying. I know we've talked about this a lot in the last sort of year, couple of years, like are these empires on the way out? But, if you look at the way these people are trying to do imperialism, like, it's not very good. Like, they're not doing it very well anymore. I don't know if it's a case of an empire coming to its the end of its time, so they're just starting to act in ways that are increasingly irrational, desperate, and kind of overly violent. If you look at some of the most successful empires that have existed in recent history, if we think of the success, quote unquote success, of the British Empire, the British Empire didn't just rule through military force. They didn't just rule because, we've got all these bombs or we've got all this military equipment, so we can just drop all this shit on you. Like, they ruled and through influence. They did things like, they embedded their culture in these countries. They embedded their language in these countries. They carefully creative relationships and curated relationships with the elites in these countries for a kind of slow burn kind of imperialism that really, once they were there, once the British were there, they were really rooted in those places, or really rooted in those countries, and then very difficult to eliminate. And that kind of finesse, if you like, about imperialism is really not what Trump is doing now, and is not what I think Netanyahu is doing now. It's kind of lazy, quite dumb, stupid imperialism, really, that's entirely kind of fueled by hubris, I think, and a kind of desperation. It's totally unrealistic, and Iran have shown that, like, this just isn't going to cut it. You're not going to be able to carry on like this. And yeah, so I feel like we are seeing these empires just kind of really drying up through more and more irrational behavior.
That's actually a really, really great point about imperialism, and that these what were once strong imperial powers are now proving to be really weak. And I like the idea of it being this hubris. Like, what's driving all of these conflicts is really just a lot of pride and arrogance. And I think a lot of it is just these egos that are driving a lot of the things that they're doing. Because on the one hand, like, you've got the US attempting to kind of broker this ceasefire with Iran, but then failing miserably at it, and then kind of wanting to present itself as this stabilizing force. But I think when you have Trump in power, it's not stabilizing at all. Like, all he's done is continuously do a lot of instability. They are not the adult in the room, although they want to depict themselves as such. And they're not capable of de-escalation, because if you were, then imperial powers are able to have these things around them, these states and regions around them, come together in some way or another. I'm not justifying imperialism at all. I think it's fucked up. But Israel have just been like, yeah, F you, US. I'm gonna go do what I want to do in Lebanon, because I want to do this project. I want the Greater Israel project. So you're absolutely right. There is a dismantling of these imperial powers that are now being side-eyed and looked at as weak and meager, and are being literally laughed at. And you're also right in saying that a lot of people are regretting their choices in making Trump president again. Do you think the American people will learn their lesson with the things that Trump has done in his tenure as president so far?
I mean, the deal with Trump always coming back was this was a winnable election for, like, the Democrats if they chose a better candidate. So it comes back to the same questions we have about here on reform. Can reform be beaten? Will people, keep going rightwards? Or, and it comes back to, well, what are the other options on the table? I think in many ways it feels a bit better here now that we've got the Green Party. I feel a bit more hopeful. In the US, with the exception of a few bright sparks here and there, as Zoran Mamdani, who, by the way, can never run for president because he was not born in the US, so that will never happen unless there's some legislative change there. And there's not really a lot of alternatives on the table. Maybe Trump will just be so bad that the Democrats will just get voted in again by default, much like what happened with the Labour Party in 2024. But then that de facto factory setting that the Democrats are on at the moment is also pro-genocide. In some ways, of course, there are some things that have happened that wouldn't have happened under the Democrats, but in many ways we wouldn't be where we're at the moment, where Trump and Israel are able to behave with impunity had the Democrats also not been just completely passive when it came to Israel and in no way threatened their ability to be able to fulfill their greater ambitions of a greater Israel, to flatten Gaza. They laid the groundwork, and then Trump has come in and helped them kind of finish off the job. So it all comes back to what are the choices? Are there some viable choices? And I'm very concerned about the Democrats. On the day that Donald Trump was talking about annihilating a whole civilization of people, old Democrats like Bill Clinton were tweeting about basketball, or Barack Obama was tweeting about fucking nothing. So, and I get that they're not in politics anymore, but it just, it felt like a kind of a metaphor for like, wow, you guys are really in a alternative universe here. There's this kind of this existential moment happening potentially in world politics, and you're talking like everything's normal, and it's just like I don't know. It relies on the Democrat Party being able to decouple itself from the establishment and to become a party for people again, and I don't know if that's going to happen.
I doubt it. America's in an absolute state, and I think anyone who did vote for Trump, good luck to you, and I hope they learnt their lessons. That's all I want. That's all I care about. But before we move on, it's 2026, so we really want this year to be big for Turn Left. I mean, look, it's already big enough-ish. Like, I'm in the studio. We want to be more ambitious than last year and to really put us on the map. And as you can see, we're leveling up with having a part-time studio somewhat with guests in person, but we want to officially have our own space. And for our contributors, we pay for the work that we do. We do Turn Left alongside our full-time jobs. Your support over the years has been amazing, and we are ready to take this to the next level. We rely on small donations, so if you want to be part of a media organisation that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support, and there you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. And as you know, you can also become a YouTube member for just 99p. On to our final story. In a recent episode of How to Win an Election podcast by The Times, former Treasury advisor Simon Finkelstein attacks Zach Polanski on his economic policies. Let's take a look.
The Treasury wouldn't take long to give them messages like they gave to Kwasi Kwarteng in the aftermath of the mini budget.
If Prime Minister Zach Polanski has all these promises, how do just people... I'm interested to know the people you worked with. How do they think about this? How do they go? We're going to have to make these impossible numbers add up. We're going to have to square these impossible circles.
Well, my optimistic take is that fiscal reality always asserts itself, and the bond market and the markets more generally exist. And if there was Prime Minister Zach Polanski and his Chancellor entering number 11, I think they would be hit with a fairly rude awakening, and the Treasury wouldn't take long to give them messages like they gave to Kwasi Kwarteng in the aftermath of the mini budget. The interesting thing, I think, they're spoken of as new and shiny. I think it's actually quite a boring programme from the Green Party. It's fairly old Corbynism, massive spending, huge tax rises, nationalisation. It's actually quite, and also funded by someone else. They haven't really set out an interesting way in which we shift the burden from assets to work or anything innovative. Really, what we're saying is the rich will pay with a nebulous wealth tax. And actually, none of the structural changes really that the economy might need actually are being addressed by him at all. And I think under the weight of those contradictions, rather than individual policies, the Green Party platform might fall.
These sorts of people need to be challenged. I'm really tired of the term old Corbynism, because we see right through that BS. It's the fact that they want to keep the rich rich and the poor poor. So people need to wake up when it comes to people like that trying to tell us about fiscal rules and fiscal responsibility, when all they want to do is line their own pockets. That's the scariness of it all. And I think the framing of that question was rooted in it was pushing him into a certain direction anyway. So that answer was going to be skewed anyway. But the classic big brain adults in the room with their quote unquote fiscal prudeness, claiming that spending lots of money is inherently bad. Finkelstein comes in with a notable fallacy when he invokes the bond market. And there's two ways you can look at this. Number one, modern monetary theory, MMT, proponents say that you don't need the bond markets to fund anything. The government has a sovereign currency and it can spend money by creating it. There is no finite pile of money. This is true. We cannot run out of money. The constraints are real resources and inflation. You can't spend endlessly, but the limit isn't the amount of money the government has. It can add a zero electronically. It must be careful of how much it spends, otherwise, prices will go up. Therefore, it doesn't rely on the bond market to fund things. It's pretty much immaterial. However, even if you are not a supporter of MMT and you think governments must always borrow money to fund expenditure, it doesn't mean it has to be fiscally prudent and certainly does not need austerity. Investors want certainty. That matters more than government policy. Raising taxes and spending a lot of money doesn't automatically spook the bond markets. As long as you communicate your long term plan, explain how they will get their money back, everything will be fine. The Liz Truss situation is entirely different. She decided to bring in tax cuts for the wealthy on a random Saturday with no long term plan. The policy itself wasn't the issue. The problem was lack of communication and strategy. Why does she cut taxes? Does she have a long term plan? She could communicate to investors that cutting would boost growth? No, absolutely not. You want to spend more as long as you have a long term strategy, which is spend for investment. This will boost growth, increase jobs, etc., and the markets won't be spooked. But it's more neoliberal bollocks from the corporate media. Banseka. We hear these arguments against the left a lot that we're economically illiterate, yet the attacks itself are illiterate, but also dangerous. That way of thinking enabled 330,000 deaths from austerity. What are your thoughts? And do you think Zach can convince people to not listen to the so-called adults in the room?
Yeah, I thought it was so funny that he talks about, like this is old Corbynism, it's actually quite boring. And then he listed off a load of stuff that sounded really exciting. Like, yeah, like that all sounds quite great. Because, we may have heard, a few people, on the left make these arguments over the years, but like in terms of what we've actually been experiencing economically for the past 14 years at least, it's none of that stuff. So frankly, it all sounds very new and exciting, to be quite honest. If you're like me and you've lived your entire adult life under austerity and sort of neoliberal-esque political policies, then that all sounds very grand and exciting. Completely agree with the stuff that you said about the fact that I think bond markets they care more about than what he said, right? But bond markets care about credibility, yes, and that can be construed in lots of different ways. They care about predictability, so anything that comes up as a surprise, we're doing this, is likely to spook them a little bit in a way that a more well thought out plan in advance is less likely to. They care about growth prospects, so if you can talk about borrowing money to invest, for example, and how that money might then be returned back to the taxman, that should have an impact on how markets react. So you're completely right to talk about Liz Truss and her unfunded tax cuts, which came out of fucking nowhere, which really spooked the markets and gave them a real jump scare. So it's about a lot more than just literally, oh, I don't like that policy because it's left wing coded. It's something a bit more substantial than that. There is a real point to make, to be fair, and this is a challenge, I think, for Zach Polanski or anybody on the left who ever attains any kind of real hard political power. It would have been an issue for Jeremy Corbyn as well, something to think about if he had won in the elections he'd run in as well. There is a point about how bond markets can constrain our politics. And, rather than, I suppose, sort of chortling away on a podcast about, that's just the way it is and people need to be realistic, that we could have a more detailed conversation about how we look at these difficulties with regards to bond markets and how bond markets can, I don't want to say hold us to ransom because that sounds too strong perhaps, but how bond markets can perhaps get in the way of things that we democratically have voted for. If the people of this country vote for the Green Party, let's say one day, and they end up being our governing party, they should be able to deliver on the things that they've promised, and a bunch of unelected people in the bond market shouldn't really be getting in the way of that. So we can have a conversation about what levers government might have, for example, to be able to release some of those constraints that the bond market sometimes put on economic ideas as well, right? A central bank, for example, can do things like cap yields and stabilize markets. If you look at countries like Japan as well, for example, they show that if government debt is held more by domestic institutions, central banks, or other public bodies rather than private hands, which is what the bond market essentially is. That's again dispersing or having a wider portfolio of where bonds are issued, which means that perhaps we're less reliant on private bond markets, who can then kind of hold us to ransom a little bit as well. I'm not an expert on these things by any means, but it would be nice if we had a media, I suppose, that was more interested in having those conversations about, well, how do we circumvent some of that, or how do we not be too reliant or too constrained on the bond markets if possible? Can we? It's a real question. It's a real question for socialists, communists, people who wish to see an economy that is beyond capitalism, perhaps as well. It's also a serious question for social democrats who wish to work within the constraints of capitalism. Can we do the things that we want to do within a capitalist system? So these are all important questions, and if we had a better media, we'd have that debate and conversation rather than two people just sneering over each other at a microphone about, oh, this lefty person wants a bit of money for poor people, but that's impossible because the bond markets won't like it. Let's have a real conversation, please. Some quality media would be nice. Do I think final point, do I think more people are listening? I think people seem to be quite excited by the Green Party. I don't wish to get carried away here. I do sometimes wonder if am I in an insane bubble where I just think this is better than it is. But like the Green Party winning a by-election council seat in Kent, I live in Kent just about, like, that's very impressive. The win that they pulled in Gorton and Denton as well, very impressive. So I think people are finding the optimism perhaps and the hope that is coming from the Green Party. It's not, reform's a bit dour now. They're a bit like, we lost, but that was actually rigged. And the Greens are offering, I think, a bit of hope and stuff. And there's been a real focus on cost of living, which of course is on everybody's minds. Probably is going to get worse if the situation in Iran is not resolved anytime soon as well. And so, I think that people are listening. And I think, most people, of course, are not thinking about the bond market when they hit the voting booth either. Even I'm not, like, they're thinking about, do these policies sound good or not? And that's how I'll vote. So, I don't think that this type of stuff, this doom mongering and scaremongering, didn't exactly work in the Brexit vote. People still voted against their economic interests, to be fair then. And I don't think it's going to work probably now, So I think that the Greens still have a good chance, or whoever, people on the left, whoever, to put forward these types of ideas, hopefully without too much of a blocker, if it's packaged in the right way and it's hopeful and it's about something people can really latch onto and make sense of in their real life.
It's really who delivers the most convincing message at this point, because you'll have people who will appeal, people who are enticed by the things that those two Tories are saying when they're talking about bond markets. And I don't think that I'm not enticed by that sort of stuff. I'm like, I need people who are in touch with our economic realities and in touch with just the massive amounts of inequality that's in this country. So whoever can deliver the most convincing message, I think that's the people who are the people that are going to gravitate towards. But also I'm wanting people to wake up and look at the sorts of people that want to maintain the status quo. And the sorts of people in those room are trying to maintain the status quo, where they are ensuring, again, their own interests, but not the interests of the majority, which is the fact that a lot of us are the creators of wealth in this country. We are the ones that contribute to wealth in this country through the labour that we exert every single day. So I hope that people do kind of wake up a little bit. But really great analysis, Banseka. I think it's a really great opportunity to bring our producer in, which should come as no surprise that it's a certain individual. It should be Curtis. Hello.
First of all, I want to apologise. I made a big mess up today. Steve MC81 gave a £5 super chat and says, have a fiver towards a new audio mixer. So there's nothing wrong with the audio mixer. I did a mistake and one of your audios went really loud and people are like, oh my God, I need to take my headphones off.
Oh, no.
It was basically, apparently people can't hear me. Is that right?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
As well.
Is that people being silly? I don't know. Don't do that if you can't hear me. But anyway, so I was like cranking up the audio. Maybe it's not coming through my mic, to be fair. How's that? Is that better? But there's an echo and I'm very quiet. Let's sort out these settings then.
Who was the really loud person? I hope it wasn't me because I'm loud anyway.
I think I'm the loudest person. It's me.
How's that? Any better?
I mean, I can hear you perfectly either way.
Can I? Yeah, they can hear you. They said yes.
So basically, yeah. Software. I'm sorry, read the comments as well what I'm trying. So basically, I accidentally up some volume because I again.
Oh.
Oh, hold on.
See.
I'm not very good at this
I
stuff.
don't know.
Guys. I'm not the tech guy.
The tech gods are angry.
I mean, to be fair, is that the only thing that went wrong?
I don't know. I think so.
That's pretty successful.
That's not too bad. I'm very sorry for anyone who, got a wind of someone's voice.
The sound is low. I can turn myself up. I wonder if that's possible. Oh, Christ. Any better? I'm really close to the mic. I reckon I've got the wrong mic probably connected. Also, I think I was coming out with one ear.
That's pretty weird.
Hey people, am I any better? People are saying it can't hear me. Some people say they can hear me. It's gone audio. Okay. Yeah, I should have only one ear works. I thought I fixed that one. Okay, people are saying it's fine.
Don't touch it again.
Yay.
Okay. Yeah, so the equipment's fine. I think I'm getting picked up someone else's audio, to be fair, though. Maybe I should be quieter. But yeah. Anyway, let's just go on the comments, I think. Also, the comment system is very different, so bear with me. But yes, thank you, Steve, for the £5 super chat. And we've got a massive one. A £19.99 super chat. So thank you so much. And it says, just because it's Friday, money for the studio pot, and because the Green won the KCC by-election. There was an election, yes. It was Kent, wasn't it?
Yeah, Kent. You know, I'm quite surprised by that because I swear there were lots of stories coming out about Kent leaning towards reform. That
We have a reform council already.
yeah, they did, didn't they? They did. Had a reform They had a reform council, and then now it's Greens.
That's my council.
Oh my god!
I live under a reform council, guys. But the by-election was just one councillor.
Oh right. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for that, Coops.
We can hear you all fine. Stop with the awkward silence. Get on with it. I mean, I would, but I get people saying weird shit. I know. Okay.
Stop with the awkward silence and get on with it. I literally love. I never feel awkward in silences. It's so hilarious.
Still just going through. Oh, I think we've got like some more membership coming. Again, apologise that the comment system is not as good as the EV Marks, or the system is entirely better. But I think there's something else we can do, maybe, which I'll look into it. But I think we've got some. We've got some Turn Left memberships. Antifa Vegan Boy gifted 10 Turn Left memberships. Thank you so much. Okay, and see what else we got. I think we'll go to our comments. God, you've got loads actually. It's really hard to find. So we've got a sneaky Lewis Aaron in the chat. I don't know if you're still watching. For your information, the Farage story, as I've been working on it for months, there's so much more to come out, and it is, guys. The Iran network is connected to terrorism, assassinations, and very dark money. There's so much going on with like the Epstein stuff. Lewis has been spending hours, days, whatever, looking into it.
tirelessly working on that. And he always like sends messages about updates that he's come across, but he will spend a really long time on it. He's a great investigative journalist. Go check out Lewis Aaron on TikTok, please, and Instagram, because he does amazing work in terms of the journalism that he does, and he deserves a lot of credit.
Spec says, "Where's Len McBain tonight?" and Curtis's pen. Where are they?
A pen, but apparently it's not Curtis Daly's pen.
It's not the Curtis Daly pen, is it? So this comment thing, it tends to just favourite pretty much everyone's comments. I can't find the good ones or the ones I wanted to show, which I will get there. So bear with me. So they're all going to be random and sporadic. They're not going to be based on a particular story. Edward Sexby says Nepo babies on the Times podcast.
100%.
Who were their parents?
Yeah, they are. And this is why they're so like, I just don't find them, they're not people that I think can speak about economic realities because they're so out of touch. Like they haven't ever experienced the thing that a lot of us do experience, which is the impact of austerity. So when they're saying that a new person like Zach Polanski, who could eventually become prime minister one day, would kind of get this country into the gutter, I think is so out of touch of reality. What happened over the last 14 years when we were in Tory rule? Did we flourish? Am I in some sort of different reality? We didn't flourish at all. I think everything went down the gutter and people were so much worse off. So yeah, they need to just get fucked.
Yeah, I just hate how, like, I don't mind them bringing up like the bond market and how difficult it can be to navigate that if you've got a more left-wing program. I'm not here to say like, oh, there wouldn't be any issues, but I think it's just the way they're just completely shut down and they're not even willing to have the debate. Probably so-called free speech warriors or whatever, but you can't even have a debate where you talk about the nuances of that and have a variety of opinion. I think that's why I find it just poor media, poor information cycle. Like, it's just boring. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming lots of people listen to that, but who wants to listen to that?
Steve says it's old Corbynism, and I thought it was a really weird thing for the Times to say. It's like, why? It was like some kind of insult, but like Corbynism, at least in economic policy, was talking about like wealth redistribution and nationalisation, but that's popular with the people.
Yeah, I found that interesting. But I feel like that's used quite often because people are still interested in smearing everything and anything to do with Corbyn, and like it's kind of getting a bit old. But yeah, if you were to kind of remove Corbyn's name from it and speak about wealth redistribution and all of this sort of stuff that appeals to people and closing that gap of inequality, I don't think anyone would sit there and go, no thanks. Like, I think people would go, yeah, actually I do want wealth inequality to that gap to be closed. But the minute that you attach anything Corbyn-esque or Corbynism to something, people immediately get their backs up about it, like, no thanks. But if you actually start framing it literally like, this is what we want, X, Y, and Z, then they're like, oh, actually I agree with that. But yeah, I think a lot of people will go, yeah, I don't want Corbyn or anything to do with him, so they immediately switch off.
Michael says, when did Stuart Little get into politics?
I swear to God, I thought this too. I looked at those glasses and I was like, fucking hell, take them off.
Oh, lol.
That is funny.
We got some love for both you. Ooh, yes, Sarah and Banseka. It is Dream Team. And then Hungry Kitty Nom Nom. Wow. What's
Sarah.
a name? Says Sarah. So, I mean, that was worth bringing up the comment because, yeah, it was why not?
It's a good point, Sarah.
This is interesting. Here we go. Dallal Haynes says, no market would be adverse to energy independence and renewables, especially now after Israel's illegal war. Markets would be fine. Awesome analysis, comrades, by the way. And that's the thing, right? If we talk about going 100% renewable, that's seen as hard left politics, not realistic, net stupid zero hearing from the right wingers. But actually, when you have a policy that is less disruptive, because when we rely on oil, for example, foreign oil. When war happens, obviously that spikes. And investors care about consistency and continuity. So if we were to have an energy system that completely transformed our energy systems, then I think the bond markets would be fine. So this is an example of like left-wing policy also working with markets. It's always seen as people in the political establishment see like left-wing politics as an anathema to business, money, and markets, which is often it's not true.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I mean, it's a bit of a weird one because I do also feel like there is within these bond market sort of institutions that there is, of course, like biases against left-wing coded stuff. So sometimes that's why I think you see bond markets making decisions that on paper actually don't really make sense. Perhaps there's like, vested interests in, oil and, big oil money and things like that. So again, I don't want to make it sound like I just think they're completely logical, because I don't think that they are completely logical. I think they've got their institutional biases as well. But yeah, I do believe that there are levers that a left-wing government could use to shift bond markets, and also just take, as I said before, like get away from an over-reliance on bond markets. Like bond markets are not the only ways that government can issue bonds. Like the government can issue bonds to itself, which I'm sure right-wingers would absolutely hate. How can the state borrow money from itself? It can.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's two ways. Obviously, you kind of brought out the modern monetary theory kind of thing, which is that, like, we don't actually need the bond markets to fund things, that the government can literally just add a zero to the balance sheet and do it. Of course, people then say, yeah, what about inflation? And I say, yeah, no one... look, I consider myself a supporter of MMT. No one says there's no limit, right? Inflation is a limit. It's the point is the economy is not like a household budget. You don't have like a finite pot of money. You can create as much money as you want, but obviously you need to be responsible with it and don't spend too much money. Otherwise, there's inflation. But even if you didn't sort of support MMT, the traditional ways, we'll borrow from the bond markets, we'll do traditional borrowing. That money is going to go on investment, it's going to create jobs, and create more tax receipts, and then we're going to give you your money back. Because the economy, I mean, how does it work now? It's all going to the top. People are not getting decent quality jobs, and less tax receipts for the government. I mean, is this neoliberal way also not a failure? Of course it is, but you've got people at the Times who all went to fucking public school, all hang around with each other, and this is the only thing they know. They think neoliberal economics is the only right thing, and any delineation is obviously wrong. They are so narrow and tunnel vision in their analysis.
Yeah,
and they'll continue to be. That's how it's always going to be. They're going to continue to be, because it's only about their own interests and not the fact that a lot of people are suffering under austerity, because it's just not their lived reality. The two people that you saw in that last story are people who have a very different lived experience to the majority of people in this country. So they're only going to see things from that perspective. But yeah.
I'm going to go through, because I've got YouTube open so I can see the donators or the Turn Left memberships. I'm going to do that. So Michael at the top of the show gave a Turn Left membership, so thank you so much for that. Specs Bean Farmer, you've been a member for 22 months.
Wow.
That's nearly 2 years.
I'm actually mad.
I can't believe you stuck with us with all our tech issues and stuff for that long. And Specs also gave 5 Turn Left memberships. Thank you so much. Steve MC81 sent 10 Turn Left memberships. DSX gave 5 Turn Left memberships. And Steve gave another 10. God.
Thanks. He's so kind. All of you are kind, but super generous.
And Cole Sylvester 639. I don't think I've seen you before. Sent 20 Turn Left memberships. Wow, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It means a lot. We've still got loads of people dunking on the Times radio. Jim Speak says a briefcase alert. Which is, to be honest, it's this. I mean, to be fair, even Zach Polanski picked up. I think he mentions that briefcase politics, and that's like it's all briefcase politics. Which, to be fair, is the criticism I have of the Green Party before Zach Polanski. I was like, they're a bit briefcasey, but that is pretty much our entire political system.
Yeah, pretty much. And just this idea that we're so constrained within these immovable rules that just can't be shifted in any way. I mean, it's just lacks serious imagination just to say, well, these are the rules and you can't step outside the rules, and if you try, you're fucked. And that's, shit.
But maybe that's what we need to do, just shift away from this binary thinking. I think we still think of things in like black and white, and actually I don't think it sounds like such an OAP thing to say, but the world doesn't work like that. Like, and it doesn't. I don't think the world works in these like rigid binaries that we attempt to put life in. So it is like needing to kind of just wake up a bit, and have more nuanced conversations about it. And Banseka, you said this earlier, but like reframing the conversation, like having media talk about these things, like have proper conversations. I still feel like we're not having proper conversations because we're still kind of stuck in this like left and right thinking and black and white thinking, and actually it's not as rigid as that. So yeah.
Yeah, and like these rules as well, like they're only constructive for some people, right? Like there's no rules for the wealthy who are going to move money around anywhere they like. Oh yeah, I'll move to this country, I'll move to that country, I'll donate this to reform, I'll donate a cool 4 million or whatever to reform. These rules also don't exist for like boomer pensioners apparently either, who just get like infinity state benefits while the rest of us deal the whole colder hard face of capitalism. So
yeah,
there's rules for some but not for everyone.
Facts.
That's true. And I think someone said this in the comments actually, which is that there's never when it comes to war, we never question how much money. And that's when what you're talking about, that there's different rules, right? If we want to spend money on healthcare, for example, it's where's the money going to come from? When it's for war, it's endless money. They love MMT and printing money when it comes to that.
Infinity money.
It's the infinity money glitch. I am searching for comments based on the Iran, Lebanon. I mean, to be honest, it's a terrorist attack. It's almost like I think it's like a 9/11 style terrorist attack. At the moment, 300. The latest I know is over 300 people have been killed. 1,100 people have been injured. The death toll is likely higher. This is one of the worst attacks on Lebanon from Israel. And weak condemnations for people. It's always the same shit, It's always like, oh yeah, we condemn this.
Yeah, it's so weak. Like Starmer, I think, got asked the question recently by I watched it with Peston, and we were like, so what do you think's happening? He's like, yeah, I don't agree with what's happening. And then it just ended there. And I was like, okay, and then what? Like, what are you actually going to do about what's happening over there? And a lot of it starts with the, the exploitation of arms and actually being really loud about the things that are happening, because the things that are happening at the moment are literal war crimes. Like, I don't understand why we're skirting around the issue so meagerly, and I hate that we as the UK are now being positioned as, I think, quite a weak country when it comes to global politics because of our inability to get away from America's side and look like their poodle. So I don't know, I think we've got a long way to go when it comes to condemning the things that are happening, because what's happening in Lebanon is not normal. What happened in Gaza is not normal, and this desensitization to it, I think, is only going to enable these meek condemnations.
Yeah, and like just thinking ahead to like a possible reform government in a few years' time. I mean, I think it was Layla Cunningham was asked earlier this week about why Reform UK doesn't have a spokesperson yet on foreign policy. They don't have a shadow kind of foreign policy person yet. And I was just thinking, they're like, oh, we haven't chosen the right person yet. I couldn't help but think, it's because it's all decided in Washington for you.
Exactly.
You don't need anyone to think about who the foreign policy positions of reform might be. You'll just take your orders from Washington. Like,
do you remember? They do have a shadow home secretary. Do you remember when they did that thing?
What thing?
It's the fake shadow cabinet.
The fake shadow.
But they still have
something.
it.
I don't know.
So if you
right.
It did make me laugh because they don't have one, but they pretend that they do.
But they're not. You have to be in opposition to have a shadow cabinet.
Yeah.
But they've got 7 MPs, whatever. Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous.
So
like, we're the real opposition. I mean, look, you're doing well in the polls, granted, but you're not. It's not how it works. You're not the fucking opposition. Like, please, just calm down. Graham Sudworth says, "Oh no, Sarah is stuck in Curtis's basement dungeon. Blink twice if you need help."
I'm blinking. Help. Joking. I'm joking. It's a great setup, guys. Better than mine at home.
Yeah, man.
I'm watching you, see if you're going to blink twice. Michael says, "I must say, I love Sarah Banseka combo. Always a good show, up there with Curtis Kev combo. I think, much love to Kevin, but this is superior. Come on."
Oh, no.
Sarah Banseka, incredible stuff.
Yeah, I love this combo as well, but I'm biased.
No, it's great.
Hey, look,
it's great.
Big up yourselves, man. I'm going to probably end that for the comments, partly because very new to this kind of new thing, and I can't find a lot of your comments. I think I'm going to do a bit of research on how we can improve it. But of course, this is like an entirely new professional system. I mean, if you're in our Discord, you would have seen the... you would have seen basically the equipment. I've got about 1 million monitors and stuff. So, and yeah, obviously there's going to be like tech issues going forward. Obviously we're not using the software every show. If we're fully remote, it'd be back to EV Mux. But when we're in the studio, it's going to be like this. We're going to try and get more people in the studio, like Banseka. And of course, I think Sarah and Banseka coming again in person is a must. I'm sure you're all going to agree with that one, especially our viewers.
Definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm going to hand back. Again, it's been nerve-wracking
great.
trying to do this.
No, but honestly, I think you've done an excellent job, so I'm really grateful. Thank you, Curtis. It's been great, and I think like it's something we want to do regularly. So I think we were bound to come across some issues here and there, but it will eventually become a very, very seamless process. And like, big ups to Curtis for actually doing all of this. Like, this wouldn't have happened without Curtis, because I definitely am not the tech one in the group at all. And I think Lewis, Ben, and Callum could probably say the same thing, although they are very techy, unlike me. But Curtis has done a great job, so thank you, Curtis. And honestly, what a show! Like, our first in-person show, which I think is really great. I mean, for me and also for Banseka, trekking up to Leeds. So thanks to all of you who tuned in, and thank you, Banseka. Excellent analysis as per bloody usual.
Thank you so much for having me again. It was so good.
Thank you. So thank you to all of you who tuned in, and obviously thank you to Banseka for coming all the way to Leeds to be here in person with her insights and her incredible analysis. Remember, as ever, we go live every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 7:30. You've been watching Normal Ireland Live. Take care.